this is going to be a how-to segment. How to stop the swirling of the mind. It's right in his sutras, and there's two principles that he teaches. One is abhasa or abhyasa, that's practice, and vairagya, detachment. Constant practice and detachment. Constant practice and detachment. There's a Yoga Sutra. Abhyasa is the effort to concentrate the mind. Well, how do you concentrate the mind when you're in the workplace? And there's distractions, as we heard at the very beginning, that little video. There's three things. It becomes firmly established when there's uninterrupted cultivation, or nairantarya, means you do something for a prolonged period of time. You do yoga practice for a long period of time with some inner sense of intention and purpose. I understand you normally have the beginning with a yoga session. And in this event I just took part in this past weekend, there were yoga classes each morning for 3 mornings. And each morning the yoga instructor explained and emphasized the importance of intention when you're doing yoga. There's a nice Sanskrit word, sankalpa, it's intention, or where there's satkara. Sat means eternal. Your attention is, your purpose is beyond the temporary. When you're doing yoga, there's something temporary going on, for sure. Life, there's something temporary going on, but there's something longer term, or ultimately something eternal. So when you do yoga practice, it's with these three things. Prolonged period of time, every day, something that's done every day, something that's done for a prolonged period of time, and with the intention that's going to take you to a good place. Those are the terms in this Yoga Sutra. That's the definition of practice. Let's do it again. Definition of practice with anything, in yoga or anything. You do your studies at school, or learn cooking, or learn how to operate your computer. With anything, practice has these three elements. Something that you do every day, something that you do for a prolonged period of time, and something what's really effective is if there's a higher sense of purpose to it. I'm just going to share something that's anecdotal because it helps understand how yoga works and the power of intention behind yoga. Some years ago, I had a knee problem. The doctors called it meniscus tear. But my understanding is there's cartilage that connects the thigh bone with the other bone below there, and there's this cartilage that connects them, and it tore. And when it tore, my knee started to swell. And when my knee started to swell, I couldn't move my knee. And besides it was painful, it actually was dangerous, and we'll go into it. The blood flow in my lower leg wasn't going properly because I couldn't move my knee. So I had a medical problem because blood clot formed in my lower leg. So I went to a doctor. They did their MRIs and all those things, and they reached the conclusion, yes, there's a meniscus tear, but you don't need surgery. I was thinking, that's it, surgery. I said, no, I'm the surgeon. I can go in there and clean it up. Your knee moves fine. I could clean up the ripped part, but that's not what you need. What you need is to rebuild the structure around that it's no longer doing anymore. You need physical therapy. So great. Let's go, physical therapy. I'd never been to a physical therapist, so he sent me, by his prescription, to a really good place it specializes in New York City for sports injuries. And they did their thing, tested me out, this, that, they looked at the MRIs, this and that. And then before they gave their therapy, they asked the important question, the intention question. What do you hope to accomplish on the other side of physical therapy? On the other side of your yoga practice, what do you hope to accomplish? On the other side of physical therapy, what would you like? What's your intention? It didn't use that language exactly, but that was the question. So I said, well, I want to be able to go up and down the stairs like I'm not an old man, because now it takes me, 10 minutes to go up 10 stairs. And that's not, I don't want to do that. Okay, good. I wrote it down. What else? And I said a few other things, and so, really good. What else? So I understood she's drilling on what's really important to you. So I said, okay, here's what's really important to me. Coming in the fall, I'm going to be going to India. She said, oh, my friend is going to India. What part of India are you going? It's like a social lady. And I said, I'm going to Vrindavan. Oh, what's Vrindavan? It's the place where Krishna made his appearance. Oh, really? And then so I got into it and said, in Vrindavan, there's a mountain called Govardhan. And I plan to walk around Govardhan. But to walk around Govardhan like this, I can't do it. So I want to be able to walk, not ride in a taxi or a rickshaw or something. I want to be able to walk around Govardhan. And it takes about 6 hours. She said, great. I'll tell my friend. What's the name of the place again? So you do 15 of those and 10 of those and 15, 20 of those 3 times a day. So I went home. And I found, when I was meditating on the intention of walking around Govardhan Hill, it felt different. It was just 10 of those and 15 of those and 30 of those, 3 times a day. The effectiveness was carried best when the intention was very clear. That's why they asked me the question, so that I could carry that intention with me when I was doing my physical therapy. Same. When you're doing yoga, what's your intention? Now, if you're a follower of Patanjali, you understand what the yoga is for. It's to stop the swirling of the mind, so that you can know who you are. Those are topics we covered already. And to do that, you have to practice. So here's 3 parts for yoga practice, or anything you want to practice. Something you do every day for a prolonged period of time, and you have a deeper sense of satkara is the Sanskrit. You have faith that's going to get you to where you want to go. You get on board a train, good idea to know what the destination is. And you're hoping, with some confidence, the train's going to take you to your destination. So where's yoga meant to take you? Or life meant to take you? When you're doing practice, sometimes emotions get in the way. Different extremes of emotions. Sometimes sad, sometimes happy, sometimes angry, sometimes. Because it's the nature of this place, it's a place of duality. But it's always good when you're doing yoga or living life to right-size emotions. And that is assisted by having a clear sense of goal. Very essential in life, very essential in yoga. You have a purpose or a goal. And if you don't have a purpose or goal, then what happens is the emotions can start to expand. It's called the avalanche effect in stress management. And it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Like this person he has exams coming up for a year and a half. He's been dealing with the problem of procrastination, and now it's overwhelming him. And his exams are in 3 weeks. So it gets bigger than it has to be, and bigger than it really is. If you have a goal, you have the means to reach the goal, or as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, one who strives by right means is assured of success. So That's important in yoga. In the perspective of our life school, how important is a particular event that may be stressful or sad or misfortunate, unfortunate, or something in the past that's triggering us that we don't know what that something is, and it's ruling our lives. Here's a little example. It's a really easy one. Here's just a picture of someone riding in their car, riding on a highway. But supposing when you're riding in your car on the highway, you have somebody in the back seat that needs to get to hospital immediately. It's an urgent, critical thing, and you're the driver, and you got to get them to the hospital. And somebody does some bonehead thing on the highway, and they don't use their signal lane changer, and they move in front of you, or something like that. Now you can get irritated or scream or something, but if you're very focused on what your purpose is the person in the back seat's got to get to the hospital as soon as possible. That's my immediate purpose here. Just keep going. You have more important business than screaming at the person to cut you off. Or another example is this one, similar. I'll be very specific. One of the universities I visited was at Cornell. Nice place. And to get to Cornell, it runs along one of those Finger Lakes. And there's streams feeding, because the Finger Lake was on the left-hand side as we were going down the west side of the lake to get to Ithaca, which is where Cornell is. And there's all kinds of streams, and some of the streams made big ravines, like big, deep precipices to get down. There's just a little stream running down to the lake. So when water, a river or streams of water are running, there may be some debris or some stones or pebbles or sand or whatever, and maybe even some big things like big rocks, but the water keeps flowing, and the object that's in the way gets worn down and the water keeps flowing. Yoga or fixing the mind, where the obstacles are blips on the screen, they're not big massive things, they register, but you keep going because there's a purpose or sankalpa, an intention in all of this. And down here, this is a painting of Arjuna's mother. All of you know Bhagavad Gita. And Arjuna was the person who Krishna was speaking to. And no surprise, Arjuna had a mother. And Arjuna's mother's name was Kunti. And Kunti had a very wonderful, very dear, loving relationship with Krishna because Kunti was the sister of Krishna's father. Krishna's father was Vasudeva, Kunti was the sister of his father, so that's his aunt. So they're a family relation and a transcendental relationship. She, Kunti, and her 5 sons were put into difficulty. And she has this nice phrase that she says to Krishna, the difficulty is not the problem, because when the difficulty comes, my mind goes to you, just like the Ganges flows downstream to the sea. So if it takes difficulty for my mind to go to you, let the difficulties come, because my happiness is, my sense of the goal and purpose and mission of my life is that my mind becomes absorbed in you. That's what the painting is meant to show. There's the Ganges flowing, and she's making this nice statement to Krishna. So you've probably heard the word in yoga practice, detachment. Let's talk about what it is and what it isn't. Interesting painting, huh? So one of the things that detachment is in the mode of goodness. Is you care about someone, but the caring is expressed in the mode of goodness. Sattva guna. And the lower driving forces become diminished. That's the detachment part. Because the strong mode of goodness part, the detachment part. And then and that with the detachment, when the lower pushings or urges are there, you can control it. Because the mode of goodness is strong. And there's a craving image. So this is one of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, the Sanskrit word. Vitrishnaya is the lower consciousness cravings are diminished, that it's not caring about this fellow and his elderly wife. It's not that he doesn't care about her, but it's not with the same attachment that a young person might have. Another way of saying the same thing, detachment, this is now from the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. Detachment is being a witness to the mind. And when you're a witness to the mind, you don't identify with it. You see it, there's the mind, there's the thought in the mind, there's the emotion connected with the thought in the mind, and it's not me, you're the witness of it. Sometimes it takes neglecting the mind, even the mind is screaming something. So, the other part of this Patanjali Yoga Sutra says it requires practice. So something you do every day for a prolonged period of time, and that's part of what detachment is. It's part of what abhyasa is, or practice, with practice and detachment, or knowledge and detachment. Higher than practice and detachment is perception of the self. That's where the train is going. That's where the yoga train is going. In that detachment of the swirlings of the mind, it's so that the mind can become more peaceful in the mode of goodness, and you can perceive who you are. See it the other way. When there's swirling, you don't perceive who you are. You're caught up in the urgency of whatever the circumstance is. And you see things in a material way. So indifference to the things that are material is possible by yoga. Not only possible, it's what yoga is. You can stay focused even in disturbing circumstances. It's right in chapter 6, Bhagavad Gita. So Patanjali advises how to perceive the soul. That's the message for this evening. Here's the final of the Yoga Sutras that we'll be discussing. Pranidhanadva, Ishvara Pranidhanadva. Devotion to the Supreme is the easy method of getting into that space where you're very focused and you're locked into being focused. Now, easier said than done. It does take practice, and it does take detachment. And that's what Bhakti Yoga is, and this is the Bhakti Yoga Club. This approach, this whole session, is describing controlling the mind through yoga and through the lens of Patanjali. Here's a Bhagavad Gita explanation called acceptance. We'll go quickly. When we don't accept an undesired event, it becomes anger. When we accept it, it becomes tolerance. This is the mind. When we don't accept uncertainty, it becomes fear. When we accept it, it becomes adventure. It's the mind's orientation towards events around us. When we don't accept others' bad behavior towards us, it becomes hatred. When we accept it, it becomes forgiveness. Now, it's not easy to accept bad behavior, but when forgiveness is there, then it is what it is, and you forgive them. When we don't accept others' success, it becomes jealousy. When we accept it, it becomes inspiration. And the final is acceptance is the key to handling life well. Now, what you see here on the screen is something I learned from a friend. His name is Adi Purusha. He's been teaching Bhagavad Gita for maybe 15 years, 14, 13, 15, something. And when he came to give a quick mini summary on Bhagavad Gita, this was his talk. This was the frame of reference. And it has all to do with emotion. Certainly Bhagavad Gita is dealing with Arjuna's emotion, and it's meant to help us with ours, and acceptance of things rather than getting wrapped up in the negative emotion space is good. And the final instruction of Krishna in Bhagavad Gita is surrendering in Bhakti Yoga. Almost done. On the left is Shukadeva Goswami. Speaking to him, kneeling, is a king. Something, misfortune came to a king. Maharaj Parikshit. Maharaj Parikshit was the grandson of Arjuna. Maharaj Parikshit was the grand, so he became the next king after the Pandavas were the king, and some misfortune came to him. Misfortune was he made an egregious mistake by offending a sage that was in his cottage in the forest in meditation, and he became very thirsty, so he went to the cottage, and the sage was in meditation. He became angry. What kind of sage are you? You can't even receive a guest? And just offer a place to sit and some water. What kind of sage are you? So he insulted him. But he was in meditation. Didn't even know what was going on. The son of the sage found out that he had insulted his father. So the son, Shringi was the son's name, he through mantra, he made a curse that the king would die in 7 days. The father, when he came out of trance and meditation, heard from his son what had happened. So he sent a message right away to the king, you're going to die in 7 days. I feel really badly. My son did this, but it can't be taken back once it's done. So the king accepted, with his acceptance message. He transferred the kingdom to his eldest son, Janamejaya, and he went to the bank of the sacred river. You see the Ganges in the background, wearing just mendicant's clothes. And that misfortune became great fortune because he had invited the sages in his kingdom to assemble and give him instruction. What should he do for the final 7 days of his life? How should he prepare to meet death? And right in that exact opportune moment, this person, pictured here, 16-year-old Shukadeva Goswami came along, and for 7 days, the remaining days of his life, Shukadeva Goswami narrated the answer to his questions. He had many, many questions, and he answered all those questions. And by the end of the 7th day, his explanation to Shukadeva was, my mind is fixed. I'm ready, whatever is going to come in to take my life, because I'm detached from this temporary. It's going to be taken from me anyways. And my mind is fixed in yoga on the Supreme. And one of the best ways, practical ways for fixing the mind in our present age is this mantra meditation. There's the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra over here. And it helps enormously. If it's not the mechanical act of making a sound of mantra, but becoming very attentive to the sound, and it can transport one to a very nice place, a place where there's no disturbance from the temporary. This is an extra part that I plan to cover, not here. There's another text. I'll mention it. Mind control. There's a text on yoga that describes 5 states of mind control. Disturbed, dull, partial focus, focused, absorbed. And so, I'm not going to go through the detail, but I like the graphics here. Rubik's Cube, and there's a yogi. Someone's searching from the yogi how to control the mind. So there's stages of mind control, and you may find yourself in one of these and sometimes wavering back and forth. The goal is to become focused and then finally absorbed. So let's go back to the mantra. That's a good one. Let's see if there's some discussion. The whole thing is a science. It's like, GPS. If you know your destination, you have to know your destination, because otherwise the GPS isn't going to get you there. But you put the destination in correctly, and the GPS follow it, can take you there. The yoga system can take you there. It's time-tested, true, beyond our modern circumstances. It's just part of life. So let's see if there's some discussion. Sorry, sitting on the floor, but it's okay.
Hello. So, like you talked about false ego.
Yes.
That means like identifying ourselves with the mind and the things. So, if false ego exists, so is there something called as true ego also?
Yes.
So, like,
What's that? Your eyebrows went up. Kara, aham means false. So I am, the sense of I am. So there's false sense of who I am, and there's a true sense of who I am. There's a true ego, true who I am. I exist. That's true ego. So now, what is it? There's different ways, different levels of understanding, of defining what I am. One of those is described in Bhagavad Gita. Mamevam sajiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana. The living entity is who I am. And that living entity is the angsa, tiny part of the Supreme. It's likened, for example, the spark onto a big blazing fire. The spark comes from the big blazing fire. It's part of the big blazing fire, but it's not the big blazing fire, it's just a small part. So I'm part of a spiritual entity that has qualities like the Supreme Spirit. So what are the qualities of the Supreme Spirit? And those are the same qualities as me. The spark has the same qualities as the fire. And so, eternality, sat, consciousness, chit, and happiness or pleasure or joy, ananda, satchit ananda. That's the Supreme, and we're tiny. And our tininess is dependent on being connected to the Supreme. Like the spark has its fiery quality as long as it's in the vicinity of the fire. But when the spark leaves the vicinity of the fire, depends on where it goes. Lands on water, instant carbon, doesn't have any fiery quality anymore, etc. So your question was, is there a true ego? Yes. So I'm part of the Supreme. It's a tattva, it's a truth about who I am. But then my existence further about the true ego, I'm part of something greater than me. There's a relationship between me and something that's greater than me. Both are forgotten. But when it's remembered, that's called yoga. It's linking with the Supreme. And then in that relationship with the Supreme, there's an exchange of love between the object of love and the abode of love, or the heart, and the heart having some feelings of love towards an object. So that's part of who I am. In the more mature stage of yoga, that's how it goes. So starting to do it again. I'm a spirit. The true ego is I'm spirit soul, and I'm part and parcel of the Supreme Soul. And there's a relationship between me and the Supreme Soul, and the relationship is one of loving exchange. That's who I am. That's true ego. But supposing this all gets covered, then I get the false ego. Instead of understanding who I am, I think of who I'm not. The one who lives their life thinking they're someone they're not, generally that's called crazy. We have a world of crazy people. Those who identify with what they're not and live their life accordingly. Go ahead, next.
So yeah, it makes sense to me. And also you talked about mind control, that it requires goodness, to be in goodness to control the mind.
Yeah.
So when can we say we are in goodness, and
what are the symptoms of goodness?
yeah, symptoms, and how to be in
How do you get there?
goodness? Yeah.
Good. Well, same principle. You want to know about something, you find out its characteristics, lakshana, its characteristics. So you'll find some of them, for example, in chapter 18 Bhagavad Gita, the characteristics of goodness. Samatamattapacham shantarar arjam evacham Gyan Vijnanamastikhyam Brahma Karma Swabhavacham. So those are characteristics of the mode of goodness. So, Sama, that's the first one. We touched on it earlier in this presentation, where you see with equal vision, even though you can see diversity, you see unity within diversity. And the unity is resting upon the soul. So just take the persons in this room, but to speak of all the other forms of life around the campus, the birds and the trees and the insects and the whatever's and whatever else. Just the persons in this room, we're all different. The minds are different, our cultures are different. The differences abundant. Yet at the same time, there's a sameness because in identity, in true ego, true sense, we're spirit soul. That's the sameness. So then there's other characteristics. Without going through all of them, you can find that verse. She'll show you where the verse is in Bhagavad Gita. She likes Bhagavad Gita. She'll show you where the verse is. And gives the characteristics of the mode of goodness. And one of the key ways of cultivating it, interesting, is the tongue. So the food choices can help you go towards the mode of goodness or away from it. And the sounds that you make can help you go towards the mode of goodness or away from it. So she'll show you another verse, chapter 17, verse 15, where it says speech in the mode of goodness is where you don't make sound vibration that's disturbing the minds of others. You're mindful of the impact your sound vibration will have on you and the impact it will have on others. So compassion for others and being interested in helping to elevate the modes of nature of others starts with yourself. But when your speech, which is a strong sense, and it helps to control the mind, and when the mind is controlled, you're in the mode of goodness. Speech is very important, and tasting is very important. Controlling the tongue has a very big role in cultivation of the mode of goodness. That was the how to get there. And association is another. It's in Bhagavad Gita. One takes on the qualities with whom one associates. You come to the university because these are the places where learned people come. Supposing you went to a bar every day, eventually you become a drunkard, or of that. You take on qualities like those with whom you associate. So associate with persons in the quality of goodness, and that becomes your quality. So then, how do I know what the qualities are? Bhagavad Gita will tell you. Other references can tell you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Some comments or discussion points? You're looking around like maybe you've got something stirring in the blue shirt here. You?
I have a question.
Okay.
We go through ups and downs in our life.
Yes.
So how do we start accepting the bitter parts of the life instead of thinking about it daily?
Well, your question is following the whole topic for this evening, which I'm very happy you asked that question, because it's right on topic. Here's several things. One is, see the big picture. If you don't see the big picture, then you're in a roller coaster. Sometimes and sometimes. Sometimes. So, when it's up, it's like fantastic. When it's down, it's like, I gotta get rid of this down. It becomes obsession. And the down becomes bigger than it really deserves. You're no longer just observing, you're identifying with the mind. So then the next is the big picture is the temporariness of everything, and that leads to this knowledge and detachment. Jnana Vairagya is an essential part of elevation of consciousness. Knowledge and detachment. Knowledge leads to detachment. Then tolerance. And one of the things that helps with tolerance is, where's this train going? Or, say for yourself. What is it? This is something we did at Cornell. I really liked it. Okay, guys, you have 7 minutes. And I want you to write down what's on the screen. What is it that is meant to be fulfilled, your purpose of life? Not get an A in an exam, or some relationship with somebody or something. What is it, the bigger picture? What's the mission of your life? What is it you're meant to accomplish in this lifetime? When you have a goal, the other things are blips in the screen. The ups and the downs, using your term. It's just life. Then another image. Okay, now I've got a goal. I'm going from point A to point B, and there's a finish line. But life doesn't go like that. It doesn't go a straight line. It's up and down. So, but you know what your goal is, and you deal with the circumstance as needs, as is appropriate. But don't become obsessed about the down. It goes like this. It's another way of saying the same thing. Life throws rocks at you and it hurts. Now how are you going to respond? That's the down. So, uncontrolled negative emotions is you react. You take the rock and you want to throw it back at wherever it came from. You did this to me, or life did this to me, or something or something. That's react. Then the other is reflect. The mode of goodness is a reflection mode. Okay, life threw rocks at me, it hurt. You take the rock, you toss it up in the air a few times. Now you're in this reflective space. See, now what are my options? Depends on what's going on, but it's a principle. And one of the things that may be the right thing for me to do when I'm feeling down, or not just like the pain of being hit, or the rock itself, or where the rock came from, those 3 things. Don't be obsessed with that. Like, what's my mission in life? What are the things that give me energy and strength? And you do some of that. And you start doing things that give you strength and energy, and all of a sudden you have strength and energy. And when you're in the reflective mode of goodness space, your intelligence returns. You went out to lunch for a while. You got into this reactive mode. Now, how do you do all of that? It's easier said than done. How do you do all that? Practice with detachment. You do yoga in a way that's meant to be done, and it becomes the mode of goodness becomes, this is part of your question, becomes your life's characteristic. Knowledge and detachment. In practice. Practice is something, it becomes second nature. Now, in saying these things, just a little, one of the people this past weekend that came to our retreat in their Gita Nagari farm, she is a young lady that was in a hospital with mental problems. She was sharing this with the whole audience. They're very severe depression. No, she became obsessive about fear. And I didn't ask her what that she was afraid of, but and then so slowly, she's coming out of it, and now, that's just not a down, the ups and downs, it's down, really down. But you turn on light, and darkness is dispelled. So that light, or mode of goodness, lifestyle, and it enables you to have strength and clarity how to handle the down. Not that they stop, because there's duality. Sometimes it's wet and sometimes it's dry. Sometimes this and sometimes that is the nature of the place. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. It's just the nature of the place. So you're okay because it's the nature of the place. Now, what's my mission? Not just less down and more up. That's not the mission. It's the nature of the place. So what are we going to do? With my purpose. It's fundamental questions, but sometimes we're so busy being successful to think about what does success mean? What's my mission in life? Who am I? And those kinds of things. You spend a little bit of time in that space, that's the mode of goodness space. That's human life. Atato Brahma Jigyasa, you maybe know from the Vedanta Sutra, the first aphorism. This human life is meant for inquiring into Brahman. And you don't do what human life is and you're in animal life. And if you live in animal life, what do you do when it's ups and downs? Sometimes and sometimes. You struggle with it. But you have a human form with a higher consciousness, and then it can just take over. So live a human life. Live a life in goodness, where you do those things that take you in the direction, you cultivate, you practice abhyasa, things that take you to that higher consciousness place. And there's teachings that help, are very systematic and very clear, and you practice and practice and practice with detachment from the temporary and not attachment for sat. Turn the light on, the darkness dispels. Tamasi ma jyotirgama in Sanskrit. Jyotirgama, go to the light. Tamasi ma, don't stay in the darkness. Jyotirgama, go to the light. That's what you should do. Then, it becomes a blip in the screen. A bump in the road. Life. And so, what the higher purpose of life is what I'm meant for. And then, you become, your intelligence gets stronger, your inner strength becomes stronger, your discerning capacity becomes stronger, your determination becomes stronger. That's yoga. When it's done properly. It does all those things. It's more than asanas. Anything else?
So you were talking about the external designations. I had a question that if we let go of all of our external designations, does our life become purposeless?
What happens?
If we let go of all of our external designations,
Then what?
does our life become purposeless?
No. Two things. I hope you don't mind Sanskrit, but there's Swadharma and Paradharma. Swadharma means, like, I'm a sannyasi. That's, this cloth means. So I live my life according to the Swadharma, the prescribed duty for a sannyasi. I don't do other things because it would be inappropriate, but it's not me. I do my prescribed duty. You're a student, and you do your prescribed duty. Doesn't mean you giving up the designation doesn't mean you stop being responsible. Your psychophysical nature, and you act accordingly, but without identifying with that designation. That's a Swadharma. And what gives that strength is para. Para means transcendental. My spiritual purpose of life. I do the temporary without identifying with it, because it will help me, acting according to my nature and prescribed duties will help me get to the transcendental, the paradharma, the mission, the spiritual mission, the ultimate spiritual mission of my life. So letting go of designations doesn't mean becoming irresponsible. Irresponsible. It's encouraged, please, to continue being responsible, but don't identify with the temporary. The designation that I'm in at this time, and then it changes, and then it changes. Is that clear? Okay, good. Okay, looks like we're done. So thank you very much for coming and your patience. I hope you receive something that you can carry with you when you go. We have some snacks in the back, and I brought some cookies with me. Because something I like to do is give out some prashadam at the end.